So now we're going to follow up with putting tooltips over our bubble chart. I went ahead and started our app. I just ran npm start. So that's live and well in my browser here. Once again, I always just double check that I didn't break anything else since all these are in different tabs or different links. So those all look good. Here's our bubble chart where we left off. Once again, just double checking that we can click on those. And it'd be great to have a little tooltip here that when we deselect these, we could maybe hover over this. And I want to say probably instead of hover, when you click on these, it'll give you a little bit of information. And we pull up that tooltip. And so that's what we had designed. I threw together that quick little mock-up. Let me switch over here. So I want to build this tool tab. We may not build it, or tooltip, we may not build it exactly to this scale, but this gives us the general idea of what we're going for. Kind of a little comic speech bubble look. We'll have a rounded corner. I have a little drop down here. It's got a little drop shadow there around it. So let's jump in and get started with that. So again, on yours, if everything's rolled up, we're in hospital data source. We're in components bubble chart, and we're going to make a reusable tooltip. But to get started, we'll just do some of our basic work here within bubble charts index.js. The very first thing that we need to do something when we click on one of those bubbles. And so we do that here. So this is up for me in my file line 53, but it's in the method draw chart. And once we have a leaf, once we've appended a group and we have a leaf, we append a circle. And we want some interaction on this circle. So we'll just come down here, I'm going to erase that semicolon, and we'll just add this on. Works just like jQuery. So on, and we tell it the event we want to listen for. So on clicks, when you click on a circle, I want to do something. So I'm going to call a function. So I want to call this dot, and we'll just say, we'll call it bubble clicked. And then we want to do that same thing that we did earlier. We want to bind that back to this. So that just makes sure when this event, when this function actually gets called for this event, the context is within this class. So this dot bubble clicked and then bind this to that function. So I'm just going to copy bubble clicked. We don't have that defined yet. I'll put it down here. Let's put it down under toggle wake med. So we have kind of all of these button actions grouped together. So that function is called bubble clicked, and it will receive the, let me think, it doesn't receive the event in D3, or it receives an event, but it doesn't receive the actual HTML object, I don't believe. So we'll have to take a look at that. And that's probably a good place to start. I'm not going to put anything in here. We'll just do a console.log. I'm not putting any parameters in. We'll console.log. Got a click, and then there's a special variable within functions called arguments. And so anything in here, anything passed in to bubble clicked as an argument, we can actually look at that under the variable arguments. That'll be in an array of all the variables. So save that. Let's go over here. Let's open our inspector console. I'm going to throw that back over on the side, and we'll click. So got to click. I'm going to click on a couple of these. So I'm clicking on all dark blue here. So any of these. So it receives the data node, or receives the node. The node has that dot data. Remember, everything's wrapped up in data because at the higher level up here, we have all that information about how it's laid out into this circle layout, how it was packed together. So I see parent, height, depth. So this X and Y, that's what we're going to want. So we're going to want that along with the data itself. And so data would be the record. And so when we handle a click, we want to show a tooltip. We don't necessarily, we're going to have to make the tooltip at some point. We want to show a tooltip. So I want to separate these two events, and how we want to show that tooltip, we want to track whether or not something's been selected. So I'll just stub in here. So we'll say this dot set state, and I'm just going to set a variable in the state called selected. So this is the one the user has selected. They clicked on it, and now it's selected. And if we go back to that arguments list, notice, so arguments is a list. we want this first element out of that list. That's all that node data. And so selected, and then this will just be, we can just call this bubble something. So they clicked on a bubble, and so then we have a selected bubble or a datum. And so I'm going to erase that. We don't need to log that out anymore. So we've set the state selected. So as soon as we've set the state, something like that, I want to make sure we take note that that exists. So here where we're setting the state initially, let's just go ahead and put selected in here and set it to null. So that's, we don't have a value for that. So this.state selected null, but then later this.state selected bubble. And we can show that tooltip. Let's create a tooltip. And so I want to do the tooltip part. I just want to do it in JSX. And let's put it above the chart just so we see it showing up really quick. And when I go and get this tooltip code, I know we're going to have to build the tooltip. The tooltip's going to be built around, what the data that was selected. I'm going to make this another method. And so right here, I'm going to do curly braces because we're in JSX. And I'm going to say, hey, step out of JSX, run this as JavaScript. And so I'm just going to call this .get tooltip. So this .get tooltip, and I call it as a function. So now I need to make that function. So I'll just make a function here. Get tooltip. And we can look at that state. So we can say, and we'll just hard code everything in so we see all the logic as it's happening. The first thing we want to do, we want to say if this dot state dot selected, there's something we can do with it. Else, we didn't have anything selected, so show some other information. So if this dot state dot selected, we know there will be some data that we can show. Otherwise, we want to show, so I'm just going to return. Let's return a p tag just to stub this in. Nothing selected. Otherwise, we'll do a p tag and we will return this dot state dot selected. Oops. Let's do a couple things. This needs a return in front of it. Sorry. And then this needs to go in curly braces again, because we were writing JSX. Curly braces say, hey, step back into JavaScript. This dot state dot selected dot data. So there's where we get into that original data. And let's just do DRG description. And so we'll save that. And so now we come over here. It says nothing selected here at the top. And then I'm going to click on one of these. And so then it switched and it shows what we clicked on. So I'm going to keep clicking around in here. So let's plug a couple pieces of data in here. And to make this a little easier to work with, let's say let s equal this dot state dot selected. So this is such a small function. Let's shorthand what that is. And so we can say if we have s, do those things. And then here, this can just be s.data.drg description. And I just want to put a couple in here. So I'm just going to put the p tags that we had started in here. I'm going to put those in parentheses so that I can put some line breaks in here and make this a little easier to read. And so I'm just going to put a couple more paragraph tags in here. So let's do the DRG code. Let's do the AVG price. And what else do we need? Oh, we need the actual, we need the school, the name. So we'll do a p tag for that. And so that'll be s.data.name. Again, that goes in curly braces since we're stepping into JavaScript to access that. And then it's got this is red right here. We have to put everything in one element. So we'll throw this in a div. We've done enough here. This is such a great start. Let's keep building on. So let's make this div class name equals tooltip. So that'll be our tooltip div. So I'm going to save that. Come over here. So we have nothing selected. And then I'm going to click on this light blue in here. And so now we see UNC $611,000, and then ECMO, whatever for the procedure. And so we can click around now and see those. So let's turn some of these off. And let's get an idea. WakeMed's most expensive one, same one, the Echo. We can come out here and click on some of these. See these that are a little less expensive. So that's working pretty great. So we've got the data that we need. We just need to pull that data into this and over top of this graphic where we have it right now. So let's work on our styles. So we have this div class name tooltip. I'm going to get rid of this nothing selected. So if there's just nothing selected, just nothing happens. So we're only doing anything inside get tooltip if this has been changed. And let's see, how do we want to do this? Let's open styles.css. And so this was .tooltip is the class. So .tooltip, let's give it a width. We need something readable. Let's do 300 pixels. And then we need a height. Let's just do 200 pixels. Get us started. Let's set the background to white. Let's do a box shadow. And I never remember the correct order for this, but I think it is, we want this box shadow to be about 2 pixels up and down, left and right, a 3 pixel spread. And then we want an RGBA, and we want red, green, blue. We want black or close to black. So I think we do 0, 0, 0, and then the alpha will do 0.45. So that should give us something a little bit transparent with height. Now we want to position this. We want the position to be absolute. Now we'll have to figure out what the X and the Y should be, but that'll get us started. So we'll do that over on the React side. We have these basic styles in here. This is reloaded. It's when I click on this, now I get this bubble chart. I get my little, or bubble chart, I get the tooltip that's popped up. I got that nice little drop shadow. So we are well on our way. One of the things we did, let's fix this really quick. Let's reference our comp. Oops. We put this little like kind of dog ear down here. So let's build that really quick, and we're gonna cheat to win. We're not gonna put a shadow on that, but there's a really cool way we can put that. So let's call that the dot tooltip dash tail, the tooltip tail. And what this is going to be, this is going to have, I can't remember if we have to set a width. I'm gonna leave width and height off, but we're gonna set a border top. All right, now the borders, when you create a border on something, there's a top, left, right, and a bottom. Where those meet, that makes a 45-degree angle. And you'll see where this is going here in just a second. So we're going to set the border top to be, and I'm just going to pick a number to get us started. Let's do 15 pixels. So the border top is going to be 15 pixels. It's going to be a solid line, and the color is going to be white. We want the color of the border top to match what we have the tooltip set to. And then we want the border bottom to be 15 pixels, solid, transparent. So it's not going to draw a border on the bottom. And now I'm just going to copy and paste that. And so we'll do this left and right. And actually, just so this shows up, before we set it to white, I'm just going to set this, to red, just so we can see it. So I'm going to save that. We need a div called .tooltipTel. So at the very bottom of this tooltip, let's have a div .tooltip-tel. So now I've got this div class name tooltip-tel. And so let's go over here and look. Let's click on one. And so we can see it started drawing something down here is not quite right. So I believe we need to just adjust some width. Let's do this interactively. So just grab a hold of that. So div class tooltip-tel. I'm just going to come down here and edit the CSS. So let's set a width. I cannot spell width. Width of 1 pixel. There we go. So if you notice what it just did, when we set that width to 1 pixel, take a look at that. we get that perfect little arrow. So what we're doing, we're just drawing the top part of a border, and it just so happens that the way those borders join on the sides makes a 45-degree angle. So there's how you can really quick make a little arrow. Now to position that, we're going to do the same thing, position absolute, and then we're going to set top 0. So notice where it puts it. If we set top 0, it goes to the top of the tooltip. And we know how tall the tooltip is. We set the tooltip to 200 pixels tall, so set the top to 200 pixels. So now it's sitting right there on the bottom. And then let's adjust the left. So that's 15 pixels wide, our little arrow that we made. So half of that's going to be 7.5. And then we set the whole thing to 150. So if we were to go, we'll just show you what it looks like. If we were just say left 150 pixels, that's half of this thing. It's not quite half. We have to back some of that off. So we have to account for all the padding. If you look inside here, you can see kind of what the different numbers are, but there's that border 15. So we can just visually look at this. Let's back it down to 130. Let's see if that, boy, that looks pretty close. Let's see, what's 120? That looks too far over 130. I really like 130. I think 130 is close there. So let's plug that in. And so we can hard code this style because tooltip tells can be positioned absolutely to tooltip. So we can go ahead and here we'll say position absolute. We will put the top at 200 pixels. Again, that's just matching whatever the height of this tooltip is set to. We will set the width to 1 pixel. I'll just go above this and set the top and left is going to be set to, it's going to be at least half of this value. It'll be less than half of this value. So it's 300 wide. And again, we kind of just looked at that and came up with 135, or 130. It may be 135. So when it's all said and done. So that's all loaded in now. Our app's refreshed, so we can click around. So we need to position this. We've got to fix how that stuff's actually positioned. We got a few things to do. Let's do some rounded corners on this. So let's do a border radius on our tooltip, and let's just set that to 10 pixels. And then let's throw some padding on this as well. So let's pad everything in by 10 pixels. I'm going to hit save. We'll come over here. So notice what just happened when we adjusted that padding. It actually, this whole thing grew by 10 pixels. So I want the padding to constrict the content. I don't want the content to grow outside the padding. So the fix for that is box sizing. And we want the box sizing set to border box. And so now padding pushes to the inside. So that looks good. Let's change this from red back to white. So now we've got our little speech bubble pointer coming down out of there. And I almost wonder if we were doing math, if that's 15 pixels wide, 150, maybe this should be set to 135? So maybe that look like it's still in the middle, maybe? Yeah, maybe. We'll see. All right, so we've got all this hard-coded. That looks a lot better. We've got our tooltip, little speech bubble in here. Those paragraph tags, I'm not a fan. They got a lot of space around them. So we can either pull that down or we could wrap all these in divs. But I'm okay with how that is for now. We have the height hard-coded, so let's set this tooltip. Let's set overflow. We want overflow Y to be scroll for now, because I want to make sure, yeah, we have this hard-coded size set. Oh, what'd I mess up, though, by doing that? Overflow Y scroll. What if? Oh, because our tooltip was setting on the inside. Let's see. Let's just make really quick. We will do a tooltip dash content, and we will let the content overflow Y scroll, and then in here, we're going to just throw an inner wrapper in this. So we'll just have a div with a class name of tooltip content. So we'll just wrap this in there. So now let's click on one of these, see what it looks like. Great. So we've got our little scroll bar in here if it's needed, and we can come back to that. We'll be able to fix this where it's not we're gonna have to worry about the overflow. But for now, just to make sure we're not missing any data, we've got everything in there. There's what it looks like when the scroll bar, it gets kind of wonky. So we've got some work to do to clean all that up, but that's fine. And we've got our little speech bubble still looks good. So we need to position this. Let's see. Once we know that this is selected, we have the X and Y values here. So that's going to get us started. But the positioning, let's look at this browser window for a second. So the very top left of the window, that's 0, 0. 0 on the X, 0 on the Y. When we get an SVG coordinate for one of these selected items, we're going to get an X and Y value, but it's going to be off of this red border. So if this were to be like 200, 300, are we still console logging this now? If this was 200, 200, or 300, 300 X and Y pixels, that doesn't tell us how to position it relative to the window itself. So in order to do that, we're going to have to go get the bounding box for these various elements. So we need to know the bounding box of the body, which is our entire page document, right? And then we need to get the bounding box of this red SVG, and we can use the X and Y coordinates. And for now, we haven't done anything that is responsive. Everything's hanging off the left, so all of our left values are going to be 0. And I can show you what this looks like actually before we jump into React. So if you just do document.body, that gives you access to the body element. The function's called get bounding client rectangle. And so that returns all of the information. So notice the body, there's some padding somewhere or a margin somewhere. So the body starts 16 pixels down. And then if we were to go fetch the SVG, we'd get the bounding client rectangle for that as well. So when we get the tooltip, let's get a rectangle. Let's do, what do we want to call this? This will be our body size. So we'll do let's do body position, POS. So let body position equal document dot body dot get capital B bounding. There it is, client rectangle. We call that function. So now we have the body position. Now we have to get the position of the SVG. So remember, we have a reference to that element. It's hanging out up here. EL here, create reference. I'm not sure if that's going to have access to those native methods or not, but we can try it. So let's say if we can do a let SVG position equal this dot EL dot get bounding client rectangle. And then let's just console log these. So console.log body position first, and then the SVG position second, if I could type. Oh, it's not happy about that. Yeah, so we don't have access to it. So if we wanted to get the position, we don't have access to the element. When is a good time, and what is a good way that we can grab a hold of that? Let's think for a second. We have our bubble chart. We know the width and height. We just don't know where it's going to be set on the page. This SVG is a d3.select this.el. Let's use that. We'll use that same code. So here we'll let SVG position equal d3.selectEl. Let's put some blank lines in here so we can see what we're doing. So we have the SVG position. We're using D3 to select this.el. And then that selection returns, there's a special property group. It's either group or groups. I think it's groups on there. And so we have to go into the first group and then we have to take the first item out of that group. And so that then should give us the SVG, and we can call get bounding client rectangle. All right, so I'm shooting from the hip on that. Let's see what happens. Oh, not allowed there either. So shooting from the hip didn't get us very far. Let's copy this. I'm going to comment this out for a second. Let's throw in a console.log here. d3.select this.el. So let's see what that selection is actually returning. So there's the selection. So it's underscore groups, and then that has an array, and it's returning null. So it could be that that way that code was running, get tooltip was running once. So I think if we just move this logic inside, we're going to be okay. So it just needs to be inside this if statement. So this was running the very first time, and there wasn't anything on the page, nothing to select from. So I'm just going to save that there. This should have reloaded. Yeah, so it's not logging that out anymore. So now when we click, we have a selection, we have groups, we have 0. Yeah, so selection groups 0, 0 does give us the bubble chart div. Interesting. So I was right, just in the wrong spot. So let's move this down, paste this in, grab that original console.log. Let's get rid of that, put the original back in here. So we're logging out body position and SVG position when we click on one of these. Sure enough, there they are. So if we want to position this tooltip accurately, we will know the X and the Y of one of these circles where we've clicked. And we can tell you right now, because everything is 0, we don't have to do any kind of math to sort that out. So let's start by just positioning this with the X and Y. So we're going to come in here and say style equals curly braces on our div tooltip. And so the curly braces lets us jump into JavaScript. Now we're going to double up on those curly braces because we're just going to declare an inline object right here. All right, so the first set of curly braces, hey, go run this as JavaScript. Second set of curly braces, this is a JavaScript object. And so we're just going to put a left value equal to, we have this.state.selected. Let's just set it to the selected, so s.x. So we're setting the left to some x value. So this is reloaded again. I'm going to click. Oh, look at that. So our tooltip is lining up. If we could draw a line and kind of see, it's lining up with the middle of that circle. So there's somewhere we can start. So we can start figuring out how to position things. We want that little drop down on the bottom of this to line up. So we know the width of that. So let's just plug those in. Let's do a const tt for tooltip width is equal to 300. And we know the tt height, I cannot spell, height is equal to 200. So we'll hang on to both those so we can use them. And this left, we're setting it to the X position. And that X position is adjusting this top corner. So we actually have to subtract half of the width of that. So it's s.x minus half of the width. So tt, half of the tooltip width. So it'll be tt width divided by 2, just to divide that in half. So we'll save that. And then we'll click. Now, look where we clicked. So watch again here. We don't have a way to close them yet. So if I click right here, if everybody's watching where I can see that, and then I click, it moves it right over in line with the one that I've clicked on. So if we come up to this row where this kind of lines up, if I were to click here, it moves over to that circle, or it moves to that circle. And it may be off. It's off by, it looks like a couple pixels. So we may have to look at that to get it pixel perfect, but it's real close. So, and it could just be maybe we just need to round it or not round it. So that's how we get that left positioning. Now this isn't going to work for everything because we haven't accounted for what happens when this gets positioned further over on the page, if this were centered on the page. And if we wanted to do that, then we want to take into account this SVG position. So the SVG position will have a left value. So left will be SVG position dot left plus the values we plugged in there. And so we'll run that just to make sure nothing changed. And so it looks fine. Those are still lining up. So we come way over here. Yeah. Still looks good there. So now we need to do the same thing for the height. So the top is going to be equal to, need a comma on the end of that. If we figure out the top position, this is going to position by the top left corner of that tooltip. So this is setting the top of this tooltip value. So if we just set it right now, and which is fine, we can just set it to, what do we have access to? Let's set it to S, the selected Y position. And we can just do the same thing. So we take the body position, and the body position has a Y value. So body position at Y. And then we add the SVG position dot Y. And then we add S dot Y. And we've not done anything to adjust for the height, so we'll just save that and see how close this gets us. So I'm going to click here. And so now my tooltip's driven down right into the middle of that, looks like. And if we look at our comp, we don't want it right in the top of that. We want it to the radius. So we do all this work to get down there, and then we need to subtract S dot R. So remember that R value is in there. That's what the radius is derived from. So now when we click on this, it's pulled this back up some. So it looks like we need maybe just a padding value. I'm just going to hard code in 3 and hit save. So we come back in here and click. Oh, that got us real close. You can see it's just barely dipping in on the top of that. And it looks like that's the case for all of these. So maybe we'll just back this off to 5. And that looks pretty good. So we can kind of see which one it's pointing to. Yeah, I think we can live with that. So that's got the tooltip in there. I'm happy enough with that positioning. Obviously, we can click on something. Now we need a way to close this tooltip. So I think the easiest thing is if you clicked anywhere on that tooltip, it would close it. That'll make it easier for the users. We can put a close button in there. We could fake it and put a little X in there. But the easiest thing for now, we'll just make it so when you click on it, it closes. And so here, we're just going to add an event to this wrapper, our tooltip wrapper div. We'll just say on click, oops, is going to equal, and then curly braces, we're going to run some JavaScript. On click, when someone clicks on that tooltip, run this dot, oh, actually, just kidding. We want to make this a function. Let's do an arrow function. And we want to do this dot set state selected null. Right, so we're just changing the state in order to hide this. So we're going to click on the tooltip, or click on a bubble to show the tooltip, and then we click on the tooltip and it goes away. It goes away not because we're dealing with, how to get rid of this specific element on the page. We're not manipulating the DOM and calling remove. It goes away simply because, just like how when we click over here, it doesn't create duplicates. That tooltip goes away because when we click on it, it changes the state of our application. And I know we've been doing React for a while, so I hope this helps drive home some of the power of React. You control the state controls the rendering and what needs to be updated. Now, with that said, it's possible to come in here and move this data around, right? Change some sort options. Oh, and we've got an error over here. So we probably want to deal with that. Circle attribute R. So I guess when there's no data selected, there's nothing in there. So anytime this changes, we want to make sure that that tooltip goes away. And if we look at that, where are we handling that? Whenever we draw the chart. It's whenever the component updates. So whenever that chart's being redrawn, we can't do anything with the selected item. So let's just go right here. Component did update. Oh, we can't manipulate the state there. We don't want to manipulate the state when these are updating. So let's go to our method. I guess any of these toggles when we're filtering the data. I guess anytime, yeah, when this gets changed, we'll just set it here. Our new state dot selected is going to be equal to null. So that's inside filter data. So now when we filter the data, we just go ahead and reset selected to null. So we'll test that. I've clicked on one of these, and then I go up here and I uncheck it. It kills the tooltip. Now I can click over here and look, and then I can uncheck it. And that looks perfect. So we had an error we had to deal with I didn't see earlier. So when there's no data selected, we shouldn't be trying to read a radius value out. So let's just go inside draw chart and take a look. So we'll say let data equal this.state.data. We do some work. We come down, constants, the groups, does a data bind. We transition on the groups. So once we've done that group data bind, that group selection, we can come right here. So let's just short circuit this. We'll say if data.length is equal to 0, then we can do groups.remove and return right here. So we're short circuiting everything. There's no else statement. It's just once we've gotten this far, we check and say, oh, well, if the data is empty, just remove everything and return. And so let's see if that works. We'll just uncheck all three of these. It's still leaving some of those behind. So I think maybe we need a groups.remove and a groups.exit.remove. And that was just because that last check mark. Oh, boy. I was not happy about that. Would help if I called that as a function. Yep, there we go. And so it got rid of that. So we're just short circuiting that function. We probably maybe don't even need groups.remove. That's probably handled by the other life cycles. Let's test that. Duke, UNC, yeah. That looks pretty good. No more errors popping up. So we drop our data in. We can click on something, check out a tooltip. We can look at just wake med information, grab a tooltip for those. So now we just need to style this tooltip. So let's jump in there and do some CSS because I will be happy with this overflow hidden. So we'll leave tooltip content there. I don't know if we're going to need it or not. We probably will. We'll probably set some font sizes. And let's reference what our design looked like. So we're real close to this. So we've got hospital, average price, and code split across the top. And if we wanted to plug that in, let's see. Let's go down to our tooltip. So when we get tooltip, here's where we're drawing or creating this tooltip. So let's return a div class name tooltip. There's the styling for the tooltip. On click class name tooltip content. I think right here we can just do some divs. And so I'm going to reference, let me just delete all this for the time being. Let's go back and reference that picture. So it's hospital, price, and code. So name, price, and code. So we'll do a div, and this will be s, oops, in curly braces, s dot data dot name. So that was name, price, code. So the last one's drg underscore code, and the middle one is avg underscore price. So let's go back and take a look. Click on one of these. All right, Duke, da-da-da-da-da. So we want to do a transform on these. We could do that transform. I think we could just do that in JavaScript since we're right here. Dot, is it title? Case. I do too much Python. Oh yeah, that's definitely not the right one. JS string title case. Let's see. We probably do it in CSS too. Title case string, return string. Although, oh, I thought it was built in. Yeah, we can just do that with a CSS. We're not going to fool around with that. All right, so let's go back up. We have our positioning in here, div class name, tooltip content. Then we're going to drop in. I wonder what the best way to do this. If we were going to do this, I think let's do this with the Flexbox. So this would be a div dot. We'll just say it's a flex dash row. Even though that's not the appropriate way to use Flexbox, we'll see flex row, and then each one of these inside of here ends up. So we want to build little blocks of each one. So we have a div, and I'm just going to copy and paste this underneath. So let's see if we can get this straightened up. Let's go over one, drop in another div. Here. All right, so we have a div, class name, flex row. Within this row, let's save that, kind of clean that up. Div, class name, flex row. Within that row, oh, did it strip my empty div? I don't think so. All right, let's see. Tooltip content, class name, flex row. This is going to be class name equals flex item. And then this is going to get a div, class name equals, we'll just put that as header. This gets a class name equal to, we'll say header and value. So let's go back over here and make sure that's still rendering at this point. Nope. Forgot to get rid of that title case. Actually, in the header, we don't need JavaScript at all because this is just going to say hospital. Then this will give us the name. And we do dot tooltip content dot value text dash transform capitalize. All right, now let's check our tooltip once again. There we go, hospital Duke. So we need to plug in those next couple pieces. Let's see, flex row, flex item, header, value, hospital. So I will copy what we have, paste that in a couple more times, and then we can just swap out. This is s.data.drg code, and this becomes code on the right side. And then we, in the middle, have average price, s.data.avg price. We probably will need to format that to do some numerical formatting, but in the meantime, we can at least put a $sign in front of it. And then under our styles, capitalizing the value, let's drop the text size down. So tooltip content, header, and let's do a text dash, no. We want, I'll get it right in a second, font, I can type, font size, and let's use rims, and let's say we want it to be, a little smaller, so we'll just 0.7 rim. That may be too small, but there's just something to start with. So now we can click on one of these tooltips. So we're getting closer. That looks a little better. Hospital Duke, average price, almost $1 million, code 1. So now we can go to our Flexbox cheat sheet and figure out how we want things justified, whether we want flex or inline flex. I believe we want just flex. So we do display flex on the parent. So tooltip content, display flex, and back to our cheat sheet. We need to set our items. So on the parent, flex direction row makes sense to us. Display flex dash direction row. And we want no wrap, so flex wrap will be no wrap. Yeah, we just do that. Flex flow row, no wrap. That works. Let's see if our tooltips are updated now. Let's refresh the page. Let's see, flex item, flex row, tooltip content. Oh, maybe we have, I guess that may be my fault, since I maybe should not have put those into flex row. We should just have each item. Let's see, if we wanted to do that, we could just move this lead tooltip content there. Let's do flex row. That looks a little better. So we just split those in, and now we just want to adjust that row, justify content to space dash between. So justify dash content, space dash between content. So we'll save that, go back over. And that looks a little better. So let's compare that, how we have that right now, to what we had comped up. Let's go back to our comp. So we want to right justify the right side and center justify or center the text here for the middle items. So we can fix that. Let's do, we'll just make a couple utility classes. We'll say dot right justified, which we get a text dash. Do that every time. Text dash align right, and then we'll do a dot center justified, which will get a text dash align center. And so dot right justified and dot center justified become our class names that we can use over here. So div class name flex item. This is actually going to be center justified and a flex item that is right justified. So we'll go take a look at our tooltip again, and that looks a whole lot better. So that looks like we're dialing in now on what the comp was showing. Hospital average price code. So now we need to just plug in our description, I believe is what was next. So our description goes in the next section. So here we're going to copy this flex row, flex item, copy the start of that. We'll drop down under the flex row, make a new flex row, and close that div. And so this is going to say description, and this will be s.data.drg description. And let's make this, we did the transforms on the values, so I think, let's see what it looks like. Yeah, I want to make this value lowercase. Or actually, if it's set to value, sorry, let's see, can we not just do drg description dot lower? I am doing too much Python. JavaScript, lowercase, string. Is it 2 lowercase? There it is, yeah. So let's do 2 lowercase. So we feed the text into the front end as lowercase, and then our CSS here is just, oh, we clicked on it and it closed it. Oh, do we have a, oh, yeah, we have some stuff we're going to have to fix. We have a bug. So we'll come back to that. Oh, I see what the problem is. Yeah, I'll show you how to fix this. Okay, so hospital, UNC, average price, code, 834, description. So we need some space. That's a little tight. So let's put a little bit of space in between there. Let's go back to our flex cheat sheet. Was there a thing about the rows? I was looking to see if we had. This may be where we would need to use CSS grid, and I don't want to try to do that. Align content, space between. Yeah, that's okay. We won't mess with that. Let's just jump in here and we'll do a bottom padding on the flex row. So flex row will just get or actually we can just do a margin bottom, and we'll just push that content down about 20 pixels. And actually, if we don't want to use pixels, we can actually use rims. So maybe we'll just push it down 1 rim. So we'll take a look. See how that's looking now. Get a little more breathing room in there. I like the look of that. Tooltip's a little bigger than it needs to be, so we could double check that. I'm not seeing more than 2 lines of text, so we could adjust the size because we're not going to mess with trying to do the Boolean flags in the original design. But we need to wrap this up. So let's fix that bug. So if I'm scrolled all the way up to the top of the page, and I'm going to refresh this and load from scratch, and I'm going to click, this is positioning this incorrectly. So the Y value is messed up in this case. However, if we scroll down, then it's correct. Okay, so I took some time and fixed our bug here. So I'm just going to refresh the page so you can see this working now. When you scroll down and you click on a bubble, we get the tooltip positioned correctly above it. If you are scrolled up to the top of the page, same thing. So that positioning now is accurate whether you've scrolled up or down on the page. Now, to explain what the fix was for that, I had to think about the order of operations and the math we were doing. So I just turned the screen recording off and sorted through it. So the very first thing that we do is we position this element to the selected item's Y position. And so that takes it to the Y position for the bubble. And then we add to that, subtracting the body position from the SVG position. And so I just was flip-flopping those values around to figure out which order they go in. But this SVG position.y is going to be a positive value unless your page is so long, so tall, that you can scroll past the bottom. And then once we've moved those values together, we have to subtract the height of our tooltip to move it up, and then we subtract the radius. And so just to show you, if I take that off, where we subtract the height, and I click here, you can see it positioned kind of under my cursor there. And if we were essentially, because I'm dividing it by 2, I also added a 1.5 in there. If I get rid of that divide by 2, we're going to position that top corner over there. So, or we can put the divide by 2 in and just cut that out for a second, add in the X value. So basically I was taking these values in and out, working on the positioning until I got the positioning where when I click on this, I can see where it's putting that top corner. And so that ended up being the fix for that. So I'm going to put my parentheses back around that. And then I'm going to turn this back on. So our left ends up being the SVG position dot left plus the selected X value So this is just adding any padding to our X value minus the width divided by 2. So we're just taking half of the width of that box out. So that just centers the box left and right. And then we just add in 1.5 to just knock that over to cover up for the padding, because there's a padding of 3 pixels on those. And then we're setting the top. We're going to the Y position, so the Y position here for that circle. And then we're adding to that the adjusted values for the body positions, X and Y. So now when we've scrolled up, that's going to be, the body position is going to be 16 up here. So there's 16 pixels that bump the body down. And then there'll be some number like 268 or 260 pixels that bring us to the top of this. So we add those two, or we subtract them. I may be saying this backwards. Subtract those off, and then we are subtracting the height of the tooltip and then the radius that just pulls that up enough so the tooltip's just touching the top. So that was the fix. It took me a few minutes. I didn't want to try to confuse you more in the screen recording, so I'll leave that screen up. There's what the code should look like. And once you're done with that, your tooltip should be working. And we're in a spot where we can adjust the styles later. That's no big deal. I will leave that up to you. You all are very well versed in CSS, so I can leave that up to you to adjust the styles around that.